Oi, oi! Hello and welcome to, I think this is episode 3, and it's like a form of anti-post insight. Obviously, I've mentioned it before and I'll reiterate again, I'm not having any anti-post bets this season. It was more painful at the start of the season than it was in probably the last 6, 7 weeks, but getting into the Christmas period, like, there's a few you could probably feel like you want to get stuck into. And when I say a few, there's a few races you feel like you might want to get stuck into. I do feel like there's a lot of information to be found over the next couple of weeks into the new year. And then from sort of January through to Cheltenham, it's maybe more just confirming those views that we've had. That's how I felt from an anti-post perspective. But obviously this year, not actually striking the bets. It's going to play a different view, I think, on how I'm looking at things at this standpoint. I've recorded something the other day with a few lads. Charlie Sharp was on there, Alex Kerr, and man like Jamie Wren was on there. So I'll maybe stick some cards up on the screen, but there's a link to Boxing Day View. So we did like a 40-minute episode. We talk about the long walk hurdle in there. The one that I had a bit of an outside chance on isn't even in the declarations. So cheers for that, mate. But the grade ones, we have talked about our views of the race, a few weeks out, so before we know what ground and runners are like. But I think that's a good way to look at things. And then I've also done the same. There's another video which I've called Festival Focus or View to Festival or something like that. Another one, again, I'll try and stick a card up where I'm basically explaining to you guys. And we're talking about, and it's like an opinion, it's not just mine. We're talking about what our fancies may be for some of those races and where our views stand on it. Because I think it is important to take stock at certain times in the year. This is a really important time to do it because it's easy to look back and say, wow, after this horse has won on debut, when it's won a grade one at, say, the Dublin Race Festival, to say, oh, we should have been piling into that. But the reality is sometimes you can't be piling into certain horses. So I'm going to go through all the big graded races, pretty much the same order as usual, in day order, race card order as you like, and then just give you a bit of a view of where I am with it. I haven't really done much prep for this because I don't think that the video would offer as much benefit if I was stalking stats, trends, left, right, and centre, other than what I just know inside me anyway. And then I want you to get my genuine view when I'm looking at prices of horses. Something that would be worth doing at this time of year as well, which we'll skim onto just before we look at these markets, is maybe looking at the prices for some of these races that are coming up in the National Hunt calendar. Now, it's kind of a bit of a skew when you look beforehand. It's like when entries come in for a race, I like to be able to not see prices. I want them to come out. The 48-hour decks are perfect for it. I want to better price a market and suggest where I think they should be. Obviously, you get some tiny clues from anti-post betting. You can see market movers to see who's likely to run in races, who's not. But it just gives you a little bit of a vibe. Maybe not so much of who's going to be going to win it at Cheltenham, but at least gives you a bit more of a vibe of where the view is of who maybe is going to run in the race. Not necessarily going to win it, but the depth of races, and then what pointers they could be for Cheltenham. Obviously, we talk about that a lot more in the other videos. I'm just scrolling through the prices now, so they're up on the screen. So bit of a refresher for me, bit of a refresher for you guys as well. But there's to say, I'll stick some cards up. The links to the videos are in there. I personally think they're well worth a watch. They're not your typical previews. They're not your typical anti-post advice things, but it's very important to talk to other people about what you may fancy or at least where your views are. That's where racing Twitter is really good because there are so many opinions out there. You do need to spend some time filtering out the stuff that you don't really value and finding the ones that you do like, but as a discussion for another day. I'm sure you guys have probably already watched some of the Harry Findlay interview that's been put up by Simon Ott for Star Sports Bet. Obviously, Harry Findlay's the main man. He echoes in there, which is just it's decent to see that most people are like against other people's opinions. They seem to, for whatever reason, not value other people's opinions or not want to hear it, and they get annoyed if someone else tips up the same horse, feel like it's copying or whatever. But I think it is important to have a few judges, a handful. Maybe if you can get more than that, then you're well in. That you want to discuss horses with. You want to find out what other people are thinking because it's either going to bolster your opinion and make you think, do you know what? No, they're wrong. What they're saying doesn't make enough of a case. Or you might stand back and think, do you know what? That makes sense. Gets a bit of a view in. Anywho, as you know, I like to waffle. We've waffled far enough in there. Let's just get into business. We'll stick onto the Supreme, and then I'll just give you probably a bit more of a talking to than I did last time because we've had some action, haven't we? And just give you a bit of a feel of what I see the market looking like. So, obviously, John Bond's the easiest place to start because he is favourite and he's running this Friday at Kempton, at Ascot. That particular rate, the Kennel Gate, I think Yamworth's won it in the past. My Drogo won it last year. So My Drogo didn't obviously go to Cheltenham. Yamworth went around in a Ballymore. Then they were pitching in for like a stairs hurdle. Then they're pitching for a champion hurdle. It's a bit of a weird trip race for future sites. But John Bond was really impressive at Newbury. I was pleased to be there that day. Showed a lot of white in the eye, like looked like a bit of a man possessed, and I don't know, like I didn't expect him to be as impressive as he was. I don't think the Good Risk at All, Sam Thomas horse, is maybe as good in that bumper form as it maybe looks. He didn't look like he wanted an obstacle when he ran at Chepstow, and then I think the same was true at Newbury. So, as much as it's a level of depth, I wouldn't trust it. But obviously, John Bond just walked all over him. I want to see him go up against Nappers Hill because I think Nappers Hill is a serious horse. Whether that would be a supreme winner, I wouldn't fancy in the slightest probably. But I guess if we skim down a bit to see even where that horse may even be quoted in it. Look, Nappers Hill's like a 33 to 1 poke. John Bond all the way at the head of the market is a 3 to 1 poke. So if those two did face off, market for the Antepost betting, and I guess market for how the kennel gate's priced up already would suggest that John Bond's going to slaughter him. That may well be the case. You'd like to hope that he is going to be a superstar, but I think Nappers Hill's half decent. So maybe a bit closer between the two of those than it should be, at least in the result, maybe. But from a betting perspective, I couldn't be on John Bond Antepost at this price. You've got to remember, right, Valtor beat the Tullow Tank just before Cheltenham, and he was a 12 to 1 poke. And then even on the day, you could get like 4 to 1, 9 to 2 Valtor. So, like, just in my head, I know Appreciate went off at 8 to 11 last year, but there is arguably some depth behind this Supreme Division this year. Constitution Hill, we obviously saw dot up at Sandown. He'll probably go Tolworth, or I think he will go Tolworth. I'd like the Tolworth as a line into a Ballymore rather than a Supreme, but Constitution Hill just looked like a bit of an anomaly of a horse, didn't he? So he could go anywhere. Whether it's going to depend on how John Bond gets on, because like I say, Yanworth did step up in trip and go there. Who knows with the pair of them? Like it's difficult to say. Which way they'd go. I would probably lean towards it if I was gun to head now. The way the market's got this, John Bond Supreme and Constitution Hill Ballymore, but we just don't know. We'll have to see how they carry on. Dysart Dynamo was very, very impressive in bumpers, very, very impressive in that hurdle debut. I think it was at Cork. Didn't beat a lot, was 19 lengths clear of 116 rated horse, but that makes it a 135 performance if you take it literally, which maybe you can't, but say it's a 130s performance and he's done it easily. Looks a monster. You sort of tinged slightly with that because of Sagard and Kilcret, and obviously Kilcret got turned over. We can come on to that in a second, but maybe it's tinged. Willie Mullins, not the fanciest of owners. Maybe Dynamo could be shorter than he is. Wouldn't be one for me to be playing, but again, a lot of people I think over the summer, these are names of horses. Maybe not Constitution Hill, but your John Bonds, Dysart Dynamo. I think a few people would have been on at bigger prices. Sir Gerhard, I don't care where he goes. If he goes Ballymore, or he goes Supreme. I talked about it right at the start of the season. We know what the 7-year-old stats are like in the the Supreme and the Ballymore. I know Appreciate went and did it last year. Appreciate it was maybe not your normal marker for it, and again, like Willie Mullins, maybe trends don't apply as strongly to him. But Sir Gerhard and Kilcret were both entitled to be further forward last year. So Kilcret was a second season bumper horse, and then obviously he did get beat at Cheltenham. We know that he went and did it at Punchestown, but the depth of the race that he ran in, Largy debut came from a massive layoff, like nearly 700 days. So you can see why Gavin Lynch has put him up in the ante. He probably is price wise the wise guy's bet to put in there because you think he's going to run in all the top races and you think he'll be there or thereabouts. So you're going to get a run for your money, shall we say. And as I talk about some of these horses, like John Bond and Constitution Hill, Nicky Henderson's quite happy to run a couple against each other. Like he did it with Bouverdare and Altior. He's done it with other horses. I literally just had it in my head there. Joss's Hill and maybe My Tent or Yours. Anywho, he runs doubles in there. So it could happen if they're the races to go. But you'd think maybe they might be split up, and then you'd think with Willie Mullins a few would be split up, and then you look at something like a Largy debut and think it's going to come here. So you can kind of see it, but I don't know. Like there wouldn't be anything jumping out to me at the moment to be slapping into for the Supreme. That's as simple as I can put it, really. There'll be some interesting races over Christmas. There are some reasonable races this weekend in Ireland as well. We've got Navan on the Saturday. Forgive me, there's a decent meeting on Sunday as well. But the Saturday meeting, we've got Bumper for American Mites running there, which we can come on to later, where we've had Segahard, we've had Envoy Land, like it's a Gordon Elliott route going through. And we've got Journey with Me that's going to be Ballymore bound, that's running in a race that Bob Ollinger won. So like there's going to be some novice hurdly clues from the entries this weekend, but I think over Christmas we'll find out a lot more as well. And obviously we know Woody's been a little bit late releasing some of his horses, so we'll see how they go. I'd like to see how Kilcret goes after, but I'm sure there's stats flying about in there about unbeaten horses winning a Supreme as opposed to horses that have lost a race. So I don't know. Like Kilcret was plenty too short to begin with. You could see a similar thing happen with someone like a John Bond if John Bond was to go and get beat. I'm not saying it would happen, but I don't think it's completely out of the world that Nappers Hill could run him a close race at least. You can see the prices moving about. So I think the Supreme market's pretty dead for excitement and anti-post punting. So apologies that you're probably hoping that I'm going to chuck some things in there, but I think a lot of you know this as well, even the people that have played anti-post. You're on them at the summer at the bigger prices. You're now in a position where you're just sitting and letting them run and hoping they go well. And if they don't, maybe looking at positions to trade out, cash out, bolster with some other horses at bigger prices. But obviously just keep an eye on the entries, keep an eye on names and horses that are going in, keep an eye on odds checker. Probably daily you want to be checking this just to see which horses are moving so you can get a vibe for what's on people's radars. I've talked about it before and I'll talk about it again. Fat Jockey Forum, you need to just get on there and have a look at what's going on with the festival races, because you find out so much, say, information. It's just things that people have either found out themselves or they've decided they've spotted paths, but it's just all shared on there. So it saves everyone doing the same donkey work over and over again, and it's nice to have those people to bounce the talk off with as well. So you'll find out what you need to find out off of there. So the Arkle market, really, we know that the Irish had the best of the novice hurdlers last year, and then going into fences this season, there's no real reason why that should change. At this trip, like, appreciate it was like an anomaly for the Supreme last year, being a 7-year-old. Like, he was just so filthily impressive, but again, because of his age and the fact that he did go and do it, maybe he was entitled to be that little bit more forward than some other horses in the race. I think possibly when we look at it now, the ones in behind maybe weren't as good as maybe first thought, like a Ballyadam, like never really looked like a Cheltenham winner, did he? And then we see what he's done over fences and then in the International at the weekend. Blue Lord was very, very impressive over fences, but like, I think price-wise, because of what happened with him in the Supreme falling at the last and how far behind he was appreciated, like, I think people are still saying that there's that much of a bridge to gap, which is probably true. Fernie Hollow liked what he did on his debut. I think everyone did. Hopefully we'll see him at Christmas. I think there's a beginner's chase the same day that there is the Racing Post Arkle Novices chase, so there's a good chance to appreciate it and Fernie Hollow may run together, at least on the same day, and then there'll be some sort of comparison that we can view in their performances. But I don't know, like, Fernie would have been popular with quite a few people when we knew he was going chasing. I think if you wanted to back Fernie, you would have been on beginning of the season because you'd forgive him maybe his first run anyway. The fact that he's about a 4-1 poke now maybe sits about right. I think even if you hadn't have had a debut, you could save 5-2. You appreciate it. 4-1 Fernie Hollow wouldn't be a disagreeable view from this far out. But that's not really what we're in it for. We're in it to try and pinch some value. And I know potentially one of these horses could go somewhere else, and potentially one of these horses could be a 1-3 poke on the day. But as it stands at the moment, they could both be 2 milers. Now, I know Willie will want to split them up because they are, like, just so good. But there's a long, long way away to get to Cheltenham now. And especially with both these horses, like, appreciate it being that older horse in the Supreme, obviously has had niggles injuries. Fernie Hollow has had those setbacks. We can go back to when Fernie Hollow was bumpering and until he applied the hood, he was a bit of a concern, like didn't want to go past horses. So there's both reasons within both of those to be slightly tentative, I guess. And it's where the market sits. Now, Edwardson, I think it was a good performance, but again, he's an older horse. I don't value him as a grade 1 horse for the spring. Revere de Tail, she gets all the allowances, but then as soon as she goes up to Cheltenham proper, we know the stats for those types of horses. Like, I can't have her. Bob Oninger, we're gonna have to see what happens with him. Like, you'd think he's a speedy enough horse, but you'd think he'll be staying mid-trip for this season. My Drogo's obviously been good this season. Be interested to see what they do with him, but again, you'd think middle trip. And we've already touched on Blue Lord. We start dropping further down now, and there's horses in here that I just wouldn't have as Arkle contenders. So again, fairly boring. There may be something that pops out at a bigger price that starts to shorten up. But I think the reality is, if we stand and we look at it now, if either Appreciate or Fernie Hollow turn up in this race, I think everyone's expecting them to take all the beating. And there's nothing that we've seen so far. I know we haven't seen Appreciate, but there's nothing we've seen so far to like change that view. And obviously, Appreciate his first run's going to be in a beginner's chase, so slightly easier company. Fernie Hollow will have the challenge of Revere de Tail, given the best part of a stone away, but should Fernie Hollow go and dot up, his price is only going to collapse. And again, you'd forgive him a couple of length defeat on those terms. So again, not massive clues in the race or any real strong opinion for anyone out there, but is what it is, isn't it? I'm not just going to force it and say, back this. Anywho, Champion Hurdle, another one. And again, probably starts to print in there. I know lots of people are on Antepost and you've got some value on some horses, but again, it sort of prints in your head that maybe some of the Antepost value isn't as good as it has been in previous years. Like, there's no reason to think that Honeysuckle will not win a champion hurdle again. Like, the depth in behind is worryingly light. Sharjah, Matheson's hurdle at Christmas, expect him to go and do that. The only thing he can do is go and win that, like he has done for the last 3 years, maybe even 4. And then he's going to go and run in a champion hurdle, but he still has got that bit to find with Honeysuckle. We know that. So again, price-wise, he'd probably be the most banging each way bet for someone when you're thinking he's a 10-1 poke. He'll be much shorter than that on the day. But then are we really fanning about with each way anti-post bets? No is my advice. I prefer to back win only, and I'd rather back a couple at bigger prices. But again, we're talking this many months out, a long way for them to get there, and like Honeysuckle will just win. I'm reluctant with multiples as well to start sticking in loads of real shorties, but again, it depends how you want to play it. I feel like there's got to be something that could come over for the Christmas hurdle at Kempton from the Irish stables. Henry's got a couple of horses that could potentially do it, but I don't know. Like, you look at this ain't left wing for no reason other than the fact that Honeysuckle's as short as she is. She should win. Probably just easier just to move on. Mares Hurdle's a race that, unless I've got a view from the previous season into one, I don't really care for the race so much. I did think that Burning Victory, I think we talked about in the last episode, that with the form behind Buzz, potentially looked quite good. Patrick Mullins said that this weekend it was absolutely nabbed, like 142 off of a hurdle. Didn't really do any good for the form, but I still feel like we know that she's capable. She obviously did win the Triumph when Goshen had that freak incident after the last. Like, 40s is still, I don't know, like I wouldn't be against she's on your team sheet, anything like that. Molly Ollie Wishes was the one that I put up for the long walk. She hasn't been confirmed, so she won't be running on Saturday. Another one again that they've talked about going down the Roxana route with her. She hasn't. I do think 3 miles probably could be her best trip, but they're not running her in the long walk hurdle, so they're not running her against the big kids there. And I think that would have been a great place to find out where she was in the pecking order. So I don't know whether there's anything up with her or not. But 33s from Mares Hurdle, like, these are the sort of ones where rather than thinking and like each way on big price horses, I'd be thinking like I wouldn't mind having both Molly Ollie Wishes and Burning Victory on my slips at their respective prices, but it isn't a race that I'm too excited about so far. It would definitely be one that I'd just wait and see how things pan out. But I wouldn't be a race that I'd be getting steamed into anyway. Like, I don't massively trust the mares. I know we've talked about Honeysuckle and the Champion Hurdle, but there's something about them in there. So yeah, maybe those two at bigger prices would still be on my radar, but nothing too exciting in there. National Hunt Chase. There was a few horses I mentioned this last time. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Willie Mullins had mentioned about some horses about what they're going to do distancey wise. So there's one run-in, or it's got an entry this Sunday, and then it's got an entry in the Neville Hotel Novices Chase. Egality Mans, I think it is. Donnelly horse. It's a 7-year-old, so it'd be 7 going 8. So it would be, not saying it's out of the RSA sort of contention, but he was running against Ashdale Bob in a Grade 2 hurdle when he fell, when I think he would have won that day. So you can sort of kind of use that as a line of form to see about the ability that the horse has got. Willie will want to win the RSA. There's so many horses like your Gallard de Mesnil, Gallopin de Champs. There's a bunch of horses like that. One of them runs on Thursday, doesn't it? There's a bunch of these horses that are all touted as 3-milers. Like I mentioned, Capodano for him. We've got Statler that looked so fast the other day, which is strange for him because he didn't look so fast over the 3-mile trip when he was hurdling. So I'd still want to see him do that again because either he's progressed quite a bit, which I hope he has, and in that case, like, he'd look like an RSA type horse. But then we know the trainer likes this race. I mean, the owner likes this race, Ronnie Bartlett. But I'd want to see it again to see if he's got that sort of, if that pace has continued, then he'd be wasted in a National Hunt Chase. I think he would have been well found at the beginning of the season and like as a target horse. So I would be well against the 5-1s about him now, because I think he maybe looks like he could be RSA-ish bound. But yeah, as we drop down through some of the other horses that potentially could be out and about there, just have a look and see what prices we got some dotted in there. So Capodano was definitely mentioned the last time. Jungle Boogie, I know he's in the betting here, but I'm sure Willie Mullins said in his stable tour that could be going down the stairs hurdle route or staying hurdles route. You can go back and look at some of his form. Like, I put him up as a lively wide price outsider for the Ballymore when it was non-run and no bet didn't turn up there, and he is like a bit older and injured and things like that. But we saw Willie sent Penhill there after no runs and winning one of Stairs hurdle. That was his first run in open company after winning the Albert Bartlett. So Jungle Boogie being quoted in these ones, I think he stays over hurdles. Let's see if we've got anything quoted a bit further down for any of the big kids. No. So yeah, Egality Man's potentially could be running over this weekend. It's not quoted anywhere. Got the right entries. It's in that Neville Hotel Chase. I don't think the race that he's going to run in over the weekend. I think there's been one renewal. I think 2019 the meeting was abandoned. I can't remember who won it, but it's an okay name, but there's not enough depth in there to say that it's a target race. But it could be slightly different for Willie this year, with him being a little bit behind. But not even quoted would be a horse that I'd be not one maybe shouting out to punt, but he's the sort of horse that maybe if you can get quoted in any race market, 33s, something like that, could be, I don't know, on your radar. Ballymore Novice Hurdle. So I touched on this when we were talking earlier. Journey with Me is going to run in the race, I think. He's going to run in the race that Bob Oddinger won. Another one that was well touted over the summer. The type of horse that, as far as I'm concerned, is only going to shorten. So I'm not building a book. I'm not betting Antepost. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it, but I've said it again. He's the sort of horse that ticks a load of boxes, isn't he? He's the connections of Bob Oddinger last year, going for the same race. Again, ticks those boxes. So with Bet365 having their cash out option on there, like I know it can be a bit pish, but their top price on him is the sort of horse that anyone that's watching this video, I imagine you bet Antepost, you've already got Journey with Me in your books, probably at 33s or big or whatever, but the sort of horse that's going to be running it this weekend, I think, he's just going to shorten off the back of it before he even runs, probably like he'll be a 12s poke across the board before he runs at the weekend. I don't know. I wouldn't be raving to say that he's going to be going to win it because we haven't seen enough of him. We've had just the one spin, haven't we? But we'll have to see as well what Cigar does. We've said about the 7-year-old thing. Like I think he's way too short a price, so that takes up a piece of the market. Constitution Hill, like I know he's a 4-1 shot for a Supreme, but as I've said, I want a Tolworth winning to go for a Ballymore ideally. Big enough price, and I think it's fairly safe to say as well that with Bet365 and their cash outs, if Constitution Hill ends up 6-4 for the Supreme, regardless of whether he's actually going to run in the Ballymore or not, like he's going to be shorter than a 12-1 poke. My stance on it would be just that I think Constitution Hill potentially, like I want the Tolworth off to step up. Talked about the Kennelgate and Yamworth. We talked about I want a Tolworth horse to step up. We saw York Hill the year that he beat Yamworth. Yamworth running the Kennelgate, York Hill running the Tolworth, and they were 1-2 in the Ballymore. And we've got John Bon and Constitution Hill as the two horses we talk about here that are now at the head of the market of a Supreme. So not saying that they'll come here or that the plans are definitely like concrete. I don't know. I just think he's a bit of a price in here. But again, he looked a bit of an abnormal freak horse. So we'll just have to see what happens in that Tolworth, I guess. Probably not going to get too many clues as to target unless the ground was bad or how his performance goes. But he's probably a bit too big. But then again, we're talking about a couple of horses here that, don't know, Journey with Me's got to go and do it. Constitution Hill may not come here. They're not really juicy, big enough prices to be thinking about maybe building some sort of block bet or something like that in there with them. And I think some of the other races that are coming up in and around Christmas, like there's not too many horses that are wowing me with entries, thinking that they're going to be dotting up in these types of races. Holiday Games I touched on. I mean, I know well fancied for an Albert Bartlett, and he was one of the ones that was hard for me not to stick some money on just because he was such an obvious shortener. But I talked about the number of bumper runs. Now, all the ones that had, I can't remember exactly what the stat was I put up last time, but basically the ones that had run in more than like 2 or more bumpers were second season novice hurdlers that won it. Holiday Games massively unbucks that trend with loads of bumper performances. So doing the right things, isn't he? But personally, I'd prefer to see him. Like I think he's an Albert Bartlett horse, but like from a stat perspective, he might be better dropping back in here. But I think people probably have cover in there. But again, I think there's just a lot more at the head of the market that's clues for it than anything else. There is always one at a reasonable price when it comes to the Ballymore that you can make a bit of a case for. And again, nearer the time, the Laura Renaissance on the 2nd of January. There's plenty of horses that are entered in there. There'll be something that comes out of that race. So again, keep an eye on odds checker of what's happening in the markets. Keep an eye on odds checker for those short-term anti-post prices to see who's going where. And then it may be there's something at a slightly bigger price that could go. But I wouldn't want to be on Sir Gerhard or Dysart Dynamo at the prices they are for a Ballymore. Whereas Constitution Hill, like semi-tempted to say, get him on your slips because you could probably get yourself out of it without a problem. And then Journey with Me looks like an obvious shortness. I mean, 16s is probably fair enough because if he gets beat, you're not going to go out that much, is it? You probably better get yourself out of it, but not the most exciting of races. And again, I think it echoes that maybe anti-posty wise, it's not so easy this year. The Festival Novices Chase, Brave Man's Game, we talked about this in the grade ones as well. Jamie's mentioned it, and Paul Nicholls said at the beginning of the season that there's no rush to step him up to 3 miles this term. I think he was talking more about Cheltenham. Now, things will change if he wins Feltham. So the character style Novices changed on Boxing Day, but like he's a monster, and he's jumping so good. I talk about it over and over again. Got slated for it with Envoy last year, but you want to see these novices make mistakes. He has had to sort his feet out a few times at fences. Like, I'm not saying they have to jump really bad, but even Thistlecrack jumped big at some fences, was sort of landing on them. Like, you want to see some bit of experience in there because things aren't always going to go to plan. But I think whether he stays or he doesn't stay, we're going to have to find out, aren't we? He's definitely going to be a stronger horse next year. We know Nicholls chasers do just get better and better every single season, but probably 11-2 about him isn't horrific, but given the fact that we've got the Irish battalions to come out and start smashing up, we'll have to see. Ahoy Senior at Newbury. Now, I talked about it before then, saying that I couldn't really have him on the Aintree form. I couldn't trust it, but that's as good a performance I've seen in the flesh from a novice chaser as going back to like a Thistlecrack when he did it, and I was anti-Thistlecrack going chasing because I don't like world hurdlers going over fences. But yeah, Ahoy Senior, I think if I was saying that there's a horse that's tailor-made for an RSA, it would be him. Obviously, lack of experience around Cheltenham is a big negative. But yeah, you can see why they're priced up there. Galloping Champs still hasn't been out yet. I think he's the one that's got the entry Thursday, but anyway, they'll be seen soon when we start stepping up to some of the other horses. I talked about Statler, that I thought he was just quick and looked like I prefer him as an RSA type horse. Whether you're invested in the National Hunt Chase or not, I don't know. But again, when you see the golfing pricing in, like Unibet, no one's going to be able to get on, are they? But if you could get 33s about a horse that, again, if it gets to the point of Cheltenham, regardless of targets, what they say, you're going to have a chance to be able to get yourself out. Now, you may not get cash out of Unibet. I don't think you do. You may have to use the exchanges to do something. That's where your Paddy Power, Bet365 and Betfair at 16s are probably around about where they should be. But I think Statler looked good. Again, we want to see it on the next performance because he wasn't that quick after the last over his hurdle. So don't know whether there's anything really at big prices in here that's sort of luring me in. I think we're going to see obviously lots of horses coming out. Egality Man's the one that I talked about that wasn't quoted for the National Hunt Chase. Can't see him quoted in here, so I don't know. He'd be the sort of one that I'd be maybe asking someone to get him quoted for me. And there's a normal routine, isn't there? I think maybe William Hill's the best one to go first. You don't want to go jump straight in with a Bet365 or a Betfair when you're quoting prices. But anywho, like, he's the sort of horse that maybe for Ascaria 10 was the one that won the race he's going to run in on Sunday last year. National Hunt Chase horse. So again, that's what I mean. That Egality Man's maybe getting any race quote on him. But yeah, from this perspective of the RSA, hopefully some people are on Ahoy Senior at bigger prices. I think a few liked him after the Aintree run. Brave Man's Game, I'm sure a few people are on that one. Be informative over Christmas, but I think it's going to be a race this year. There's probably and hopefully going to be at least 3 at the top, like your Delta Work, your Santini, and Top of the Game the year that happened, where I think you're probably going to still get a bit of value all the way through to the festival. I mean, Willie's will be the one that will shorten up the most. It looks like it's going to be Galloping the Champ that does that, but I think he's plenty short enough at the moment. So we'll see how it goes. Champion Chase, it's a trappy race at the best of time because it used to just be back the Arkle winner wins. At least it feels like it's a good line in. My take on the race as a whole, Shishkin was unreal in that Arkle. I truly do believe he is an absolute monster. I know up to now there haven't been any issues with the horse, but Nicky's talked about the fact that he wasn't quite right. It sounds more and more like the way that Nicky's talking, and again, it's hard to interpret what he says sometimes because he just needs to shut his trap sometimes. But trying to piece together what he's saying, it almost sounds like he said over the summer he could not believe how big the horse had grown. And obviously I've got no visual representation of that myself, seeing him in the flesh of how much bigger he's got. And he's now got to the point where he's not showing the same sort of spark. And then there's a scope where he was saying like he's a bit snotty and all these sorts of things. And he said he's still waiting for him to basically show the Shishkin spark again. And like he may not even run over Christmas. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it's just him running scared, wrapping him up, and all that sort of things." But if you've got an animal that they knew Shishkin was good. So if you've got a horse that you know works to a certain level, then they're not working to that level. There's obviously a reason you're trying to find for it. So it could be lack of fitness. It could be that they've picked up a niggle. You'd be very surprised if a horse has gone backwards over summer, especially in their work. But it could be with him talking about how big that he's got. It may literally just be that he's finding himself in that size of a frame again. And again, I haven't seen him physically in the flesh to compare to what he looked like before. But I don't know. I feel like there's enough reasons to say that take your time with him. Basically, he's going to be going into open company. Take your time. But obviously, the longer it goes on for, the more of a concern it gets that if we're rather than him wrapping him up in cotton wool and just being a pussy and not running him, let's say that he's doing the right thing by the horse and he's seeing him on the Galaxy and he knows that there's something not quite right. Now, seeing him on the Galaxy through binoculars, isn't it? We know that he said he can't see a face in front of him, so that's getting a bit alarming and worrying. But there's just something not quite. There's something about Shishkin that's running at the moment that he's just not sure about. And at the end of the day, you're not going to win a champion chase unless you're 100%. So the fact that he's got those airs of caution about him, I can see why people would be getting excited about horses in behind, but I wouldn't be rushing to take him on just yet. And Nergamine, we know, looks like an absolute monster, but I do feel like when he was a bumper horse and then he missed a season and I had him on my tracker, like I had him down as an Albert Bartlett horse. And I get you can say that a horse needs to stay to go and win a championship, but like I think when he goes up against a proper 2-miler, I think he's going to get handed to him. And the most annoying thing of everything is that I think Chacun Poussoir needs to blow off the cobwebs. We'll remember when he had his first run after novice racing, I think it was against a Plutard where he was beaten, odds-on favourite at Christmas, got beat. They were happy with the run. And then he went off and carried on running and looked like he was going to be the monster. And then obviously last year, I can't remember the name of the horse that fell. Cashback, I think it was. There was a Willie Money horse that fell that made Chacun Poussoir have to work a little bit. So again, maybe stuff he needed to come on from it. And then the Tingle Creek run was just like so bad that they maybe are going to find something wrong with him, which means he probably will skip Christmas, I think. I don't think we'll see him to the Dublin Racing Festival. But I'd like to have seen Chacun Poussoir go up against the Nergamine because I still think Chacun Poussoir, as it stands, was the best 2-miler in training. Didn't show that at Tingle Creek, and obviously if there is a niggle, then it's brave to say it now. But I'd fancy an 100% Chacun Poussoir to beat an Ergamine at their stages of the career they're in now, especially at Leopardstown at Christmas. But I don't think we're going to see the matchup. So I couldn't back Chacun Poussoir for Cheltenham because it's either the Travel or the Hill. He didn't like either of those at Cheltenham and Sandown potentially. So like it's a big negative. Obviously, if he got to the champion chase as a 12-1 poke, I'd back him because he's too big a price for a horse that was sent off favourite last year, regardless of the fact that I don't think he likes the track. I mean, he'd travel into it, so well, at least you'd hope he would. So you'd probably better bet back to lay in that instance. Envoy's the interesting one because it sounds like he is going to run in the 2-mile chase at Christmas. Lots of people talked about him being a 2-miler back in the day. We saw Forheen win the Ballymore and then step back to win champion hurdles. We've seen Simon Sig do it, came back to win an Arkle. So could be the key with Envoy. Maybe he needs to go back over hurdles, don't know. But could you really be risking a punt on him at the prices? Maybe the 25s on Corals, if you're looking to trade on the exchanges, maybe you could take a bit of a punt on him because he was special, isn't he? But he's so far gone from the horse that he ever was before that I could never trust him. So I think really all of it just plots around, really, doesn't it? Shishkin and an Ergamine. Grenadine was a decent Tingle Creek winner, and potentially when you look at it, I know Chacun's underperformed, but was targeted at the race. Politlog went and did that and then went and won at Cheltenham. Like that was a weird year at Cheltenham that year because Deffy was odds on. A couple of horses got pulled out just before as well, didn't they? And it was just a weird year with a short price favourite, short runners in there, and then Politlog goes and does it, and you look back and think, well, I probably could have made a little bit of a case for him. But like Grenadine, it probably is about where he should be. But that's about it, really. Like I'd think that a Nergamine could progress to be better than Grenadine, and maybe possibly could already be. I think Shishkin is the best one, but if he's struggling to grow into that frame, then that is enough to be worried about backing him at the price that he is. So Again, boring. Sort of wait and find and see what's going on with it. But there just isn't anything at a price that would lure me in to think we need to have a bet. Champion bumper, American Mike. I touched on him. He's going to run at the weekend. Goes in the race that Go Hard and Envoy's won before. Like, he's already fairly well found. Good luck to you if you run him at a bigger price. I still like my bumper horses to be seen at Christmas or just after. I like Willie Mullins ones. So I would still be keeping my powder dry, I think. Sort of horse again over the summer that you might just have in your books from the beginning, but I was late to Sir Gerhard. I would have been late to American Mike if I had backed him. I'd just be sitting back and just waiting and seeing what happens over Christmas and at the beginning of the new year. So boring as that may sound to sweep on, not a sphere that I'm too keen on Antepost anyway. The Noun Turner Novices Chase, it's the bloody JLT in it. The JLT, now Bob Ollinger's not coming to Ascot. Bob Ollinger's going to go for a cakewalk at Christmas of the Grade 1, so do what you want, Bob. We've talked about Appreciating, we talked about Fernie. Considering how good they both potentially and hopefully are going to be, Willie would be mad not to split him at Cheltenham. So which way they're going to go, I don't know. But we'll have to see. My Drogo, he's the first Dan Skelton horse I think probably I've ever seen that looks like he could be the real deal. Didn't think it so much that bumper run we talked about behind Iron Maximus, or when he beat Iron Maximus, and then he obviously progressed and stuff. But like he just looks built like to be a proper horse. Whether he can topple something like Bob Ollinger, I probably doubt. But genuine chance in there. So if we're starting to look and try and think, there's got to be something at a price that could be some value. Well, yes, there probably will be something at a bigger price that could be some value. What it is, there's nothing that would really be luring me in. Like, I haven't got a short list of horses that are coming in there, because I do feel like there's enough towards the head of the market that Bob Ollinger should be winning it if he comes here, probably. Appreciate if he came here as a challenger, or Fernie came as a challenger, then they would be the most likely danger. My Drogo will come here, got the experience around Cheltenham, so again, the most likely. So just how short is something behind going to get? I don't know, maybe a 33s into a 10s poke, but you'd probably rather wait until the time to not risk the Antepost punt, and just get on and when it gets nearer to the festival. So yeah, we'll have to see. Beacon Edge I haven't talked about when we came to the Festival Novices Chase, and I haven't talked about him in here either. I'd be interested more so to see what price he was for the Festival Novices Chase, just because he ran in that stairs hurdle, didn't he? First time at the trip. Okay, maybe it looked like he didn't stay, but he's entitled to come forward for it. You can remember as well that Album Photo, when Presenting Percy won that RSA, Album Photo was miles back when he fell and broke Ruby's leg, and then goes and wins a Gold Cup after. So just when they're doing it the season before, and they might not stay when they're just trying the trips, like, it doesn't have to be literal going forward. Where is it? Oh, there is it. Like 14s for the Festival of the Chase, like probably short enough for Beacon Edge, really. But I think he could bridge the gap. Like, I think he could be there or thereabouts. I don't think he's up there for winning it. So anyway, that's the JLT kind of covered, and then swamped away going back. We'll look at the Ryanair, where there's only one horse that's going to be dirty short for this race. I said he was too short before we ran. I'm only going to echo that I think he's too short now. It was a monstrous performance behind Chacun Pour Soi last year at the Punchestown Festival. It was a monster performance this season. Monster performance in the Ryanair at Cheltenham. And like, it could just be that he is just too good. And especially when we look at the horses in behind in the betting, that like Envoy may or may not come here. Shishkin won't come here. Fakir Doudries could come here, but I don't know. I still like to see him step up in trip. And Nurgman, I can't see it happening. There's just a lot of nothing getting you excited in and around behind. But we know this with the Ryanair, that there's always like a competitive view when it comes to the festival. So when it comes to like the week before, there's normally something that you could make a bit of a case for at a bit of a price. I'd be more than keen to stay away from Allaho at this sort of price. Just historically know what the race is like. But that's not to say that he's not going to go and win it. Like, based on the back of his performance in the Ryanair last year, you'd be a madman to think that he wouldn't go back and win it again. I just feel like we've seen it before with Ryanair horses, that it isn't always as easy a race to come back and win. I think maybe it was Alberta's run's done it twice, but it's a different class of race now, I think. But maybe it's twisted again now. Maybe with the Champion Chase and Shishkin and whatnot, maybe more people are looking to drop back to the 2 miles, and maybe more are stepping into the Gold Cup sphere. Like, maybe this isn't as much of a an A grade race as it turned into, and it might be going back to that sort of B grade race, and people might run scared of Allaho, but who knows? Really, is the long and short of that. I wouldn't be getting mad keen about him at 5-2. I just think he can throw in a bit of a weird one, Allaho. Stayers hurdle. We're going to find out some clues this weekend in the long walk. I think I can't have Buzz for the life of me, so 6-1's a terrible price. I think people would have latched in and got on at bigger prices. But the Cesarewicz record, I can't even remember what it is. But there's horses that have been beating the bloody Potemps, and other handicaps. There's been loads of horses that have never won a race after winning it. So not for me, Buzz. Classical Dreams, the flash in the pan, one run. He was so quirky over hurdles as well. That's Supreme. Maybe doesn't read very well now in terms of depth of form, but see why he is where he is. Time Hill, you'd have to be very forgiving to forgive that French run because he was pants, but you've literally put a line through that. 8-1 about him is monster, really. Flooring Porter's going to go close over Christmas. The age that he is, he could be the new one that goes and wins multiple races. So probably 11-1 about him isn't terrible. I'd rather be taking like the pair of Time Hill and Flooring Porter versus Classical Dream and Buzz all day long. But again, it's not a confident thing to be getting smashed into anything. I still do think Abacadabra's was the bet last time when I said it, when I was thinking he was 33s. I still think at 20s he's probably again maybe the wise guy sort of bet now because he's going to run at Christmas. I talk about it in those videos again with the grade ones that maybe being beat in that race at Christmas isn't the worst thing to happen when you're looking at festival winners, because Flooring Porter's the only one since 2000 to win that race and then win at Cheltenham. So there's that. And then Jungle Boogie that I talked about, that Willie Mullins has said staying hurdles of him, like it's a proper flash in the pan. We haven't even seen him. We don't know what he's doing. So to suggest him at 33s when you can get 20s Abacadabras, where I think it's the route they're going to go down. Like I can't see him going champion hurdle with him. Would sound a bit bizarre, wouldn't it? So sort of where I'm sat with that. Like I wasn't really into Flooring Porter last year. I don't think I can really trust him, but he could prove me wrong. Time Hill, I thought would have been the Stayers hurdle winner. The French run, I can't really forgive it, I don't think. And then, Abacadabras, I still think it's just the wise guy's obvious, muggy, sort of punting, but I can see Abacadabras going off single figures on the day. I'm pretty sure he will. We'll see how he runs. I thought he ran pretty well behind Honeysuckle. I know Gordon Elliott said that he would like to see more, but I don't think so. I think they got exactly what they wanted out of that race. So I'll be interested to see him at Christmas. Anywho, Mares Novice Hurdle, Bell Metal has got an entry this weekend for Willie Mullins. Her bumper form was utter filth. So 100% would advise Bell Metal 16 to bet 3-5. Like if you haven't got her on your slip, get her on. Statuaire, I did say in the preview with Jamie that I thought she could win the Royal Bond. I thought she was just too big a price. I thought they were cheeky with her the time before. Patrick's reactions after would suggest that they didn't expect her to go and do that. So maybe the 7-1 about her now. I don't know. I feel like it's still maybe a bit big. I wouldn't go against it. Grand G looked quite good, but she threw in a few pants performances last year. But Bell Mattel 16s, I'd be fairly happy to be smacking her in there. And when I'm talking about smacking in there, like my normal stake for Antepost pump would be like a 25 quidder, and then I might build more up over the year, like do a few times on the bets. Like this is the Mares Novice Hurdle is a race I'm not overly keen to get tons of cash into like far out, but I cannot see how Bell Mattel will be much bigger than 16s for very long, or especially after she makes her debut. Sort of horse that will tick the boxes. So 16s Bell Mattel, like if you haven't already got her on there, I would say would be an absolute must-have. Triumph Hurdle, again, I'm quite happy to wait with this sort of race normally to try and find something in there. I like the Spring Juvenile in Ireland, so we'll get some clues from those sorts of races. I also sometimes feel like horses can progress past each other during the season. I don't really like the ones that come up really early, like a Phil Dawes done, but I know it has worked before, so there isn't anything massive that's going to come up. I did mention a couple of horses in the last video. I can't even remember the bloody name of the Willie Mullins one and the Rich Reiki. That's terrible, isn't it? Go back to the previous video, see it in there. But again, we probably won't be seeing those ones till Christmas. But there will be some ones coming out at Christmas for Willie that will be interesting. So again, keep an eye on when horses get entered. So you want to be checking your odds checkers. You want to be checking the entries, because seeing the entries, not necessarily saying they're going to run, it gives you at least comfort that they are well and they are hopefully be running soon. The potato race, this will be one that I can have a bit of an opinion in. I love the race as it is anyway. Blazing Cow did a lot wrong really, didn't he, at the weekend to go and win. Don't trust the depth of the form. And we know what it's like with these horses, that like the more obvious ones in an Albert Bartlett, sometimes it does fall a little bit by the wayside. So congratulations if you're on him at big prices. And when I say big prices, like 25s, 33s. Obviously, if you've got him at 16s and you're sat on like a 5-1 point now, then again, still congratulations for getting on him. But don't like. I wouldn't be keen on him now at the price. Like I think some of them are too short now. I think George put this up on Twitter to ask, but these are the sorts of horses like your John Bonds and Blazing Cows that you'd want to be taking on, and yes would be the answer. But then you have got to find something to take them on with. There is no rush. You can still see what horses are going to be coming out and doing bits. And we've seen the big price winners at Cheltenham and an Albert Bartlett, so you can potentially be comforted that you can wait quite late on this. You do still, when you're building up an Antepost book, though, you want to be on the right side of these horses. So the 33s of Hollow Games at the start of the season, if you can get on that, if you can get the 16s Blazing Cow, you want to get them in your book because you want the cover. So again, if you've got on them, then fair play to you. Journey With Me, as I touched on, is going to run this weekend. You always get this, your Ballymore horses that are really short for an Albert Bartlett. Some of them that could potentially go back the other way, couldn't they? I just there isn't anything again that really stamps out to me that at this moment in time you want to be getting excited about and you want to be smashing some quids into. Ramillies would be one. Wouldn't be saying back him, but would be one to keep an eye on, I think, because they really rated him as a bumper horse. Shows loads at home and shows very little on the race course. Could end up being a plodder in an Albert Bartlett type horse, but again, I think a lot of you would probably already have that on your radar. But yeah, as it stands, there wouldn't be much I'd be saying to take it on. The one that ran behind Blazing Cow at the weekend, the Skelton horse. I know everyone was cooing about him, saying that he was too big a price to get that close on Rule's debut, but I looked at his point form. Baddy Griffin Cottage, I think it is. I looked at his point form, and it's like proper crap. He's like beating like 80 rated horses now, and I know my Drogo probably looks like he progressed from that bumper run. I talked about how you can use comparative form between two horses to make one look better than the other. I think my Drogo did progress, but I do think a lot of Dan's horses are maybe forward, and that had loads of point runs. So not for me, but hey ho, who knows? It's the sort of division in it where there's not much strength in it, so he could go and run again, and then people will still be fancying him. Gold Cup's it's just a very difficult race to ever have any confidence in. Chantry House is fairly wise guy, I think. The King George is going to give us a lot of clues and a lot of answers to stuff. I couldn't be backing anything really in a Gold Cup at this point, I don't think. Protectorat was so good at Aintree. Bit of a muddling day at Aintree, and we get that sometimes where they're sort of strung out. So whether to trust it or not, I don't know. And obviously he'd run in a handicap already this season, so like I don't know, like wouldn't be keen to say that he's gonna be winning the Gold Cup, but like 20-1, I think more than anything just suggests how competitive it could be and how open it maybe looks on paper. So I don't think that's the worst price in the world. I'm just going down to see the price Fakir Doudry and Melon as well. Like I want to see what price they're like. They're absurd. Again, it'll be like nearer the time stuff. I hope Fakir Doudry over Christmas runs over 3 miles again. I hope they do the same with Melon. Like it's very hard to say that you fancy him going in and winning it, but again, we've got the supreme form, haven't we, of the horses that go and run in Gold Cups. Like I think they've both got better chance than a 6-1 pope. But you know, like I'm just trying to find a big price winner in a Gold Cup because maybe we're due one. Mare's Chase. I want to say Gavin Lynch put this one up as well. Maybe Ellie May. And yeah, price has been shortened up with it. You can see why. Like forgive her the run. She was stuffy or whatever, and like she is the best one to be in there. But I don't know. So Mare's Chase is a fairly new race. Gowler, Willie wanted to talk about her going over fences. I'd like to see that. Again, being a novice, she could go and do something different, couldn't she? It would just be, I don't know. Silver Forever runs tomorrow at Newbury. It's going to be popular in it. It's very much in its infancy, this sort of race. I can see why people are saying Ellie May's too big, but is that more the fact that she was a short price before, like your Time Hill, and your people are trying to forgive her for the sake of forgiving her? Again, she'd be on your books if you fancied her, wouldn't she? So you can leave it as that. And speaking of leaving it as that, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, I have had a notepad thing above me. I don't know if I'll get a chance to edit or not, so I guess you'd have found out if there's stuff in there. Do appreciate your guys' support. If there's anything you fancy, pop them in the comments below because it helps other people. Do make sure you check out the Fat Jockey Forum. Speak to people that like racing because it's good to talk about it. Have a really good Christmas. Keep an eye on the entries. Keep an eye on the blue on Oddschecker. And then there'll be a decent preview for all the big races after Christmas, where I think we'll have some stronger opinions. I'm going to rope a few people in that are more bullish about it than I am and have had some anti-post punts. And yeah, we'll give a better view. We'll recapture it then, and we'll see how things have changed, and then we can start getting really stuck into a few bets. So be lucky, Merry Christmas, and good night.